One is here. I just want to welcome people to our third capital chat, the Getting to Know with the DD Council. Just a few things to point out. This morning we have Brianne DeKing, who is our ASL interpreter, joining us. We also have this information provided on closed caption below, so hopefully you can see that. If you're having any technical issues with the closed captioning or seeing the speakers or our ASL interpreter, please put that in the chat and we'll get that corrected immediately. Like I said, we're glad that you're here and we have a lot of information to share. And this is kind of our get us in the know to make sure that we are all connected with what's happening at the Capitol. Amy Campbell's going to go and lead us off on a PowerPoint and kind of share some information for us to consider. I'm going to chime in at some different points. And then at the end, we're going to open it up to discussion to make sure that we're not missing anything or to address any questions that you might have. So we're only here for an hour together, so please enjoy. Thank you, Amy.
Thanks, Bill. Everybody for joining us today. There is a lot of stuff that's been happening. If you follow us on the website or social media, you'll note that there were quite a bit of things that have been happening over the last couple weeks, and it's been a month since we got back together. So I'm going to just go through a few issues, and then if you do have questions that you don't want to wait, you can throw them into the chat and we'll try to catch those as we can. And so we'll just get started here, and hopefully I won't have any technical difficulties this time. So I wanted to remind everybody where we're at in the legislative session right now. As you know, we meet for 110 days. So their last paid day is on April 30th. So we're getting pretty close to the end of the session. We have about a month left. Next week is the second legislative deadline. That would be April 2nd, which is also a holiday weekend. So legislators are wanting to get out by the end of the day, Thursday. So April 1st. I guess that's kind of funny that it's April Fool's Day for a funnel week, but that's what they call our deadlines, funnels. So at this point in the session, you've gone through the committee here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but you've gone through the committee process in one chamber. So say you started in the House, you've gone through the House committee, you've gone through the House floor debate and have been voted out of that chamber, and then you go over to the next chamber and out of committee there. So if it's a House bill, you have to have been voted out of the House and then go through the subcommittee and committee process in the Senate and be ready for debate on the Senate floor. So that's a long process to have gotten through. All committee work, with the exception of the budget and tax committees, is done after this next week. So any bill that does not make it out of committee in time, I'm still admitting people, sorry about that. Any time that any bill that's not out of committee would be dead for the rest of the session. So anything that doesn't make it out will no longer be discussed. So that's kind of where we're at with the session, and that's why this is a pretty important week ahead in trying to save bills. And some of them that we'll talk about are going to be need to make a lot of effort to get through this next funnel. So just to back it up a bit, I wanted to tell you about what happened last Friday. Last Friday, a group called the Revenue Estimating Conference met and talked about where our state is in terms of economic growth. This group meets quarterly to look at our revenues in the state to determine if we're doing pretty good, and that's what our legislature bases its budget on. And so they came in and said, the state's looking great. We're looking at 3 to 4% growth in the next 2 years. So our state's coming back from COVID pretty quickly economically. So that means legislators can be pretty comfortable spending the entire $8.2 billion that they have to spend. The governor's budget came in just a little bit lower than that. But that's because when she said it in December, she wasn't quite sure if the state would be doing as well as it was. So she wanted to be a little bit conservative and be careful about, not spending too much. And so I think if you look at how the revenues are coming in the state, you can be pretty confident in spending that full $8.2 billion. So that means legislators could just decide to go ahead and invest in things like Medicaid, or maybe clear the HCBS waiver waiting lists, which we'll later find out are over 15,000 people. Bill, was that right? On the waiting lists. So they could look at doing some of those types of things with those dollars. The Senate Republicans did come out, and I say Republicans because they're in leadership. The Senate leaders came out with a budget of $7.999 billion, and that number is there because they did not want to go overspending over $8 billion. So they wanted to be lower than that $8 billion mark. That includes $7 million in home and community-based services provider increases. Those are intended to be directly go down to the direct service provider wages. They want those dollars to go to increasing wages for those providers. The governor had recommended $8 million. So that kind of gives you an idea of where they're at with that. And it includes some big changes to the mental health and disability services regions, which require a pretty good investment in the state, $60 million in 2022 and $120 million in the following year. So I want to talk about that a little bit. The Senate tax plan includes some major changes with the mental health and disability services regions. That bill number is hot off the presses. It's a brand new number, Senate File 587. It is out of committee now, and I think they're going to debate it Monday or Tuesday in the Senate. So what it does is it ends all local property taxes for mental health and disability service regions. That is how regions are funded now, is entirely on a property tax. So that's taxes on the homes that people own. And it varies depending on where you live in the state. And that's part of the reason why they want to get rid of it. It makes the system entirely funded with state dollars. So that's what those investments you see are up there. There's a risk pool they create because they acknowledge that there's not enough money that they're putting into the system for all of the regions. You might, if some of those that have been around for a while will know that Polk County and the Scott County region are the two that always are short money. And that's just because of how the system was created in the beginnings in the early mid-90s. And then they do add a risk pool so that they can get more money, and then they add an annual growth factor. And they do not anticipate any changes to the regional management. So you would still have those regional governing boards that have providers and consumers on them. So when I've got a couple charts to show you right now to kind of explain how those dollars will be spent. But I want you to think about, if you want to think about whether you would like this or not, you can kind of think of it in terms of is the funding predictable? Is it sustainable? Is it enough money? Is it a fair system? And how will it affect your services? And those are some kind of things when you look at any plan to change how the regions function or are funded, you probably want to think of them in terms of those kind of principles, like, is it going to be a sustainable program? Is it going to have enough money? Are you going to every year know that those monies are available? And is it going to be fair throughout the state? Is it equal? Does it create better access to services? And so I have a chart because I'm a visual person.
Amy, just really quick, can you go back to that slide for a second? I just wanted to touch on two things, just to add to what you're saying is absolutely. And I think as it becomes the Senate bill and they start to debate it, if you're wanting to advocate, sometimes you can read through the bill and not always know how that's going to directly affect you, but certainly your story and how it's currently set up and working for you and how you perceive it may work going forward. And I think the other part about being fair and equitable is really something that we hear quite a bit about, is that there's always a concern that money could end up one area, one region, and more predominantly than another region. So we want to make sure that we are kind of advocating from across the state, but they do need to hear your personal stories. The other thing I wanted to touch base, I was on mute when you asked. The waiting list is over 15,000. So we do think that those revenue estimates, we're kind of, from an advocacy standpoint, looking at those waiting lists, but also starting to build some capacity, some furthering of the current system. So I just wanted to kind of affirm that number that you said.
Thanks, Bill. So this is how it works visually. So the orange block is the county levy, property tax. That's what they call it, is a levy, but it's a property tax. Oops, sorry. I went to go admit somebody. I should ask Emily, are you able to admit people too, or do I need to keep admitting?
Yep, yeah, I've got it. So you can.
Yeah, I can do it too, Amy.
Okay, I won't bother with it then, because I think every time I do it, I move the screen. So the 2114 is what I want to talk about fiscal year 22. That starts July 1 of this year. So by July 1 of this year, counties would only levy or tax on properties $21.14 per person. And that doesn't mean they charge $21.14 per person living in the house. It's complicated, but they basically multiply their population of their county by $21.14. And that is how much money they're allowed to collect from their property taxes. And then they do a per $1,000 value to assess that on your house. So I just wanted to let people know that it's not actually like if you have 5 people living in your house, it would be 5 times $21.14. That's not how they do that at the county level, but it is considered a fair way of doing taxes, because as you grow in population, you need more dollars to serve that population. So, but that is only for year 1, starting July 1 of this year. That would require all counties to recertify their budgets. They go through a process where they notify the public of what their budget's going to be, and then announce it, and the public can have comment, and then they do what they call certifying it. So they do that in March of every year. So that they're going to have to go back and redo that process in order to lower the levy. So it's $21.14 per person, and then you can see that they add $15.86 per person, or per capita is what they call it in the bill. And that would be your total $37 per person. So I know kind of Polk County's numbers, so I'm just going to use that as an example. Right now, Polk County has $30 and some cents per person. I think it's $30.87. So this would actually be a $3 million increase for them in the first year, which sounds good, but they have a $15 million now that they get from their levy. This would give them $18 million, but their budget's $30 million. So that in that situation, they would then go to the risk pool and ask for the money to fill that gap. Well, this year the risk pool is only just short of $10 million. They put in 9.9 million, and they anticipate there will be more dollars in that risk pool, because any region that's over 40% ending fund balance will have to give the difference back to the risk pool. So this is a really complicated formula, but I just wanted to show you how it would work in terms of what the bill says, that there would be an increase every year with the risk pool for people that regions that maybe don't have the full amount that they need. And then going forward, there's a growth factor put in. So it's kind of like how we do schools in the state, where we are arguing not over what the base amount of money is, but we're arguing about how much more they get each year, which is a really weird situation for us because we've never been in that situation in the MHDS regional system of asking for how much more we want each year. We're always arguing about keeping the amount of money that they have each year. So I'm
Amy, is some, and you can answer that, but is some of the concern with, at least I've heard on other committees where they haven't spent their money. I think some regions would like to reinvest that money in areas of need. So they may have a stronger disability need one year or a mental health need, but if it gets too compartmentalized, they still have a need they're not able to meet, but they might have to spend that money back. So I think that's something to pay attention to. And then the other one is that, in order to spend their money, they don't want to spend their money unnecessarily either. They would rather be able to reinvest that in key services.
Yeah, so I think how the senators explained this to me is their idea is right now you can't redistribute the money
Right.
where there's need. So as one region may need more to build out a service, they can go to the risk pool to get more on any given year. The problem is, should have gotten some water. I'll let you talk in a little bit and I'll go get some. But the problem is they do in the third year, so fiscal year 2024, after that, expect you to have 0% fund balance, which I think is what you're getting to. You can't have 0% fund balance if you're building out a new service. You can't have 0% fund balance and pay your staff on time. You have to have some money. They call it a cash flow. You have to have some money in the bank. So if you think of it like your personal account, you can't have $0 in it at the end of the month because you have something you have to pay the beginning of that month. It might be rent, might be your groceries, might be your car payment, whatever that is. You can't spend down to zero because you got to wait for your next paycheck to be able to get the money to pay for that. So you always want to have something in your bank account. You can't go down to zero. Right. So that's the same concept with going to 0% fund balance. There's providers that are worried that means they'll be delaying decisions or payments and they'll have to wait for payments and they'll be late. The other criticism I've heard of this is that it's for those regions that are going to always have to go to the risk pool. They're never going to know until December when the risk pool makes that decision whether they have enough money to get through the year. So you'll already be halfway through your year. So the question is, does the region ration its services the first 6 months in order to find out if they have enough to get through the next 6 months? Do they spend it like they do and then find out that they don't get the full amount and then have to make bigger cuts in services or create more waiting lists? There's a lot of questions on how functionally it could work for the regions by waiting that long. So you have to apply by end of October and the decision's in December. So I think there are a lot of questions. There's a lot of positives, as I mentioned too, that you have the growth factor. You no longer are differing between regions because of your property tax. You can redistribute the dollars. So I think a lot of groups are undecided right now because they see both pros and cons to that. Unfortunately, the senators said they want to have feedback by Monday so they can run it in the Senate. And this is a really big policy change for people to wrap their brains around and then give them feedback about it.
Yeah, it's in one situation good to have some money to be able to make some decisions, but then making sure the decisions reflect what the need of is. So it's really good to share your story and share the information they have in regards to that. Amy, I can take these first two if you want to get a drink of water. I'm sorry, I knew you had a little frog there, but from the ABLE account, this is one of those things where we definitely see advocacy working. You can see that it allows transfers from other accounts into the ABLE account. And if you remember a few years back, having ABLE account a way for people to put money away for retirement or for planning for people with disabilities was a big move. And now being able to transfer that money from other accounts without significant penalty was really big. And that passed 100%, 95-0 from the Senate chamber. So we're really excited about that. And we celebrated that on our website. The second one, we've done a lot of advocacy and we've had Changing Spaces come and speak at a few of our events. But right now, the adult changing station, the House File 492, it's stuck on the House calendar and it's not scheduled right now. If you remember back to Amy's Monopoly game, it's not scheduled for debate, but it could be added to the budget bill. So we want to keep advocating for that. We really feel like that's important to make Iowa accessible, both for people who are Iowans who want to travel to and from, but also making the state accessible to people with disabilities traveling through the state. I did hear in another meeting this week that there's also some advocacy to go ahead and put that in the Department of Transportation budget, just not even making this a law, but requiring them to do that through their budget. So even if it, and this is kind of unscripted off of having ran this by Amy, but even if it doesn't continue through the House, we want to keep advocating so it does end up in that budget of the Department of Transportation. We also know there's a sister bill in the Senate that also is not moving as well, and that may have not made it through the funnel. So I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Yeah, thanks for letting me get some water. I'm allergic to birch trees and I have 6 birch trees on the property. So I'm getting a little allergy situation here, but yeah, you're exactly right. I think that will end up in the budget, the transportation budget, House File 492. So we want to keep advocating for that. You just got to keep it in front of legislators on that. It's also a first step. The groups that advocate for this want to see this in all public spaces. So by showing that how they work through the interstate system, I think that's a good first step forward so people become more familiar with this topic and the issues and why we need to have them in more public spaces. There's also a bill that's been moving through because it is in the House Ways and Means Committee, that is the tax committee, it is exempt from the funnel. So this bill can take its time if it wants to. It's House File 843. It allows landlords to move a person asking for an accommodation for a service animal and requires the request to be reasonable. This is because there was a situation in, I don't remember which city, but a landlord was asked if a person could have a service animal, and the person that lived next to them was highly allergic, deathly allergic to that animal. So they wanted to move the person asking for the accommodation since they had just moved in, and the other person had been there for a much longer time, and the person sued and said they can't do that. So that is why they're asking that they be allowed to accommodate both of their residents, not just one. In this case, the other person had a disability as well. So it was actually 2 issues of who gets the accommodation. And so that was, I don't think it was a service dog. I think it was a companion animal that they were talking about. Also, in terms of the request being reasonable, apparently somebody asked for a companion animal that was a pony. And so they lived in a very small apartment and they did not feel that was a reasonable accommodation. I don't know how they will define reasonable in that, but this isn't a bigger bill. So I don't know what its future is because it involves eviction ceiling. So I want to explain that. A lot of people have been evicted because of COVID and losing jobs. And so this bill would not make those evictions public, so they can't be used against you in credit ratings and stuff if it's your first eviction. So it's a bill to kind of protect people that if they fell into a situation where they couldn't pay their rent because of a COVID job loss, that they're not going to have that on their credit ratings, or employers won't be able to see that if they're looking at that for employment. So it's in a larger bill. Move on. So I also wanted to talk about an action item that we have on our website right now, and that is on housing voucher discrimination. Senate File 252 passed the legislature. It was passed by both House and Senate on a party line vote, which means the Republicans all supported, the Democrats opposed. But there were, I noted, 2 exceptions to that. Representative Brent Sigrist from Council Bluffs and Representative Garrett Gobble from Ankeny both voted with the Democrats to oppose this. There's 3 cities in the state that have local laws, which they call ordinances, but they have local laws that tell landlords they cannot discriminate against somebody who's using a federal housing choice voucher. So I want to let you know that 1 out of every 3 people using a housing choice voucher are people with disabilities who are not older, who are not elderly. Another 1/3 of those are people that are elderly. So 2/3, 2 out of every 3 people using these vouchers are either older Iowans or Iowans with a disability. So the cities of Des Moines, Iowa City, and Marion, which is a suburb of Cedar Rapids, have a local law that says that you can't you can't say you're not going to rent to someone just because they're using this voucher. It's an odd situation, but this bill says you can't do that anymore. Telling cities and counties they can't. So basically allowing landlords to discriminate against people who use those vouchers. That was sent to the governor, and you can ask the governor to veto it. You can explain why using our action center. And I'm going to just see if I can click on it. Tell me if you can see it. Do you guys see that?
You don't. I think you have to share that one even after you click it.
Oh, okay. I'm going to go ahead and do that. And try to share it. Well, that might be more difficult than I thought. Now I lost my Zoom. Oh, where'd it go? Sorry, guys. Now do you see it?
Yep, see it?
All right. So here is our action page. I'm going to show you a little bit later. We're going to have a new fresh look on our website here next week. But right at the top is a action alert where you can take action on this by clicking on it. And I think I've shown you guys these before. It'll give you a little explanation. We've already said we want to send it to the lieutenant governor and governor. And then we give you some talking points here. Like I mentioned, the 1 in 3 people living in using those. We have a subject here. And I started it off for you. I'm writing to ask you to veto Senate File 252. You can change that, or you can, but I do hope people add to that why this is important to you. And you can use some of these messages up here. You can write something of your own, and then you just fill in your information and hit send, and it'll go right to the governor. So it's pretty easy to do. Let's stop that again and go back.
It's a good afternoon work assignment. Maybe not work assignment, but make sure you use our Take Our Action Center. It is one of the things I think makes it really accessible to reach out to your governor and lieutenant governor, but also to senators on different issues. So it's a very accessible tool. So please let us know how it works for you.
And also, you noticed on that there were other action items, or just a plain old contact your legislator. So you can contact your legislator about anything at all that you're interested in, whether it's something that we have on there, or something that you saw on this slides today, or just any other issue that you're concerned about. So it's a really slick tool. You don't have to look up the emails or anything. It's really easy to use. If you haven't used it yet, just give it a whirl. It's kind of fun. I am gonna stop there. And Bill, do you want to talk about your letter to the governor?
Yeah, so just we know on the national level that there was a act passed, the American Rescue Plan Act. And so we worked on a letter this week to send to the governor just to point out some things that we saw in the act that we want her to, prioritize or focus on, or that we think is important. First, just recognizing that the American, COVID has been, and the pandemic has been very troublesome for people with disabilities, their friends and families, from isolation to loss of jobs. It's been pretty difficult. And just our response. So we wanted to kind of point out that the FMAP, it's supposed to provide a 10% match that's supposed to help and support the home and community-based services. And so one thing that we just pointed out in there, that the law or the act does explicitly say that it cannot replace state dollars. It's supposed to supplement, not supplant that money. And so we just wanted to point that out, but also to say what we thought would be priorities. And in our discussion, we've kind of looked at those in two camps. One camp being around an urgent need and one around an investment need. And so what I would lift up for urgent needs would be the increase for direct support care wages, hazard pay, or even rates for providers. And then if there's still a need for continuous purchase of PPE or accessibility to vaccines, we see those as urgent needs that could be part of the investment. For long-term needs that we kind of would put in that camp would be funding for transportation. But one of the big ones we wanted to point out was how many people are on the waiting list. Over 15,000, actually 15,068. And that has grown the last 2 months specifically. It was a little below 13 2 months ago, and even further down a little bit before the pandemic. So want us to be able to continue to address that and serve people earlier than later in their lives. So we did send out the letter. Then we did also forward that on to the key members of the Health and Human Service Committee, and trying to reach out and kind of share what we think would be priorities going forward. So yeah.
Bill, we will post that on our website, which you see there over in the corner, infonet.iowa.org. We'll put the letter up on the website so people can see your letter directly if they want to use any of the messaging that you used as well.
Yep. We've had a few questions about the PowerPoint. We will put both the recording and then also the PowerPoint on our websites. And then I saw specifically if people are sending me an email or Brooke and I an email, we'll forward that to you if we have your email, or put your email in the chat and we can send individual ones out as well. So, yeah.
Yep. Oh, I keep hitting some button there, but I think we're at the point for questions right now. So yes, we will put that out. Oh, you know what? When I added some things on here, I had a link that was going to go to our new website. So while we have questions, I'm gonna look for that link so that I can share that with you before we get done. But let's go to questions right now. If anybody has any, if you want to raise your hand, or I don't know, can they unmute?
We do have one in there in regards to the 10%, the FMAP, what the I think it says, do we know what the 10% dollars? So I'm thinking that the question is, what's the amount? And I'm looking in the letter.
No, I don't know what the actual dollar amount of that is. But it would just be an increase to their reimbursement rates. So I think the $8 million the governor recommended for, I think the $8 million the governor recommended was 3 or 4% increase. But that's the state part. The federal match is like 2/3 of that. So I don't know how much that would equate to, but it's a lot of extra dollars in the system.
The interesting thing about this ACT money, it is 1 year, and we're still trying to get some details on what that, it looks like it would start April 1st, so it's going to come quickly, and decisions would have to be made, and then it would run throughout that year. But I think there are some still questions from the waiver on how they're able to distribute that money. So.
Oh, there was a question about how you apply for a housing voucher. That's through the Federal Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, you might have heard, agency. And I will have to take a look at that, Barbara. And depending on where you live, there's quite a long waiting list. In the Des Moines area, I know the waiting list can be like 3 or 4 years to get on that. It used to be 5 or 8 years. I think it's gone down a little bit, but I can look into that for you and give you, I'll look into that link. If I can find it here real quick, I will do that. Oh, there you go. Thanks, Mike. There's a link in the chat. Any other questions?
Emily, are you able to move us to more of a gallery look, and that way we can see if people are raising their hands, just in case they're not able to put it in the chat?
Yeah, I think, Amy, you might have to stop your screen share. Let me try this here.
I think we're in gallery now, right?
Pretty cool. Yep, we have the 3 pinned, but I can look through. If you have a question, if you raise your hand, we have a thumbs up, but if we have any questions, please raise your hand and we can address those too.
Amy Dessenberg Wines did. Are you able to?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Amy and Bill. This is such great information. I just had a question. Yesterday, I became aware of the House File 802, and I reached out and asked you guys some information. I'm curious if my local senators are not on the committee, the education committee. Do you have recommendations for how we approach those that are on the committee if we don't live in their district? And if it's appropriate, do you guys want to share a little bit about that with others in the meeting?
Or I can start, and then Bill, you can add to it. But well, first of all, when you do contact your legislators, I usually encourage people to ask them to contact their colleagues on the education committee and their leadership, because they can do some advocacy for you by reaching out to them colleague to colleague. I think that's a very effective way of advocating. You can also reach out to the chairs, vice chairs, ranking members of those committees and just say, I know I'm not in your district, but I wanted you to hear my story. They're not going to be as effective as if you're an actual constituent. And depending on the legislator, sometimes they don't mind. If you recall Dave Heaton, Representative Heaton, a lot of you may know him before he retired and worked on human resources issues. He loved to hear from anybody, no matter where they lived. So there's a lot of those that still do that and want to hear your concerns and thoughts. You can reach out to everybody in the committee if you would like, and with the same kind of message. But the most important thing is when you do contact your specific legislators, to ask them to do the advocacy for you with their colleagues.
Yeah, and just a plug, you can find all that information on our Infonet. You can find out who's on what committee, who's on the committee, and their email addresses. There's links to that, so please follow that. But just to reiterate what Amy said, maybe another way also to do that is to email directly your representative or your senator, but then CC the chair of that committee. That chair of that committee is overseeing that bill. The bill does definitely affect the whole state. So I do think it's within your right to share your opinion with the person who's chairing that bill. They're not just representing their district at that point. So I think that sending a direct line to your senator, for example, and then the chair of that committee is really appropriate.
Amy,
Yeah,
do you want to share a little bit about the bill that Amy's referring to, on what you think it means?
you're gonna have to remind me what it is.
It's the one that we talked about yesterday about the diversity in the school systems and teaching, what you can teach and cannot teach.
Yeah, sorry, I went through so many emails last night, I suddenly forgot which one we were talking about, but there is a bill that prohibits, or that, I mean, does not allow schools to have anything they think is a divisive topic, is what they call it, something that's controversial. And it, in essence, it's trying to get at not teaching about diversity and inclusion in ways that talk about systemic racism. It's in response to the Black Lives Matter protests, and a lot of schools are trying to have those conversations about how non-white people are treated historically in this country, and there is a bill that says you can't talk about that. And so that bill is almost out of the funnel. It's in the Senate. It passed the House, and it's in a Senate committee, and the subcommittee already voted it out, and it's ready for committee, the education committee on next week. So
Amy,
you want to say more about that, Amy? Other Amy?
Go ahead, Eric.
either one, either Amy Dessenberg or Amy Campbell, wasn't that House File 802?
Yep,
House File 802?
you're all right. Yep.
I was just going to say that I represent the Iowa Coalition for Integration and Employment, and we have diverse stakeholders across the state. And we've done a lot to try to provide information and training. And I know that the Department of Education had planned April 14th for Equity and Diversity Conference, where there were several in education, and there were several hundred people who had registered for that, and they've had to postpone it and maybe cancel it for fear that the presenters might use language that would be in conflict with this proposed bill. So I'm just concerned about censorship and being able to have honest conversations about the issues. And I think this would really limit, it applies to all public post-secondary environments, public schools, state and governmental agencies, any of their contractors. So it's a pretty significant number of folks who would be affected by their ability to have really free speech around these sort of issues and what kind of training could be offered. So thank you so much. This is very helpful information that you guys provided.
Amy, we do have a few more questions here. Let me see here. Sorry. There was a question about the contiguous counties with the mental health redesign.
That bill was a couple years ago, and this year there's nothing. You have to have contiguous regions or counties in a region.
Yeah, Amy, that was my question. This is Eric from Black Hawk County again. That was my question. I had heard at the beginning of this legislative session that there might be some work or some advocacy that regions could do. So I heard that around January or February of this calendar year, where at our regional meeting, they were talking about some additional advocacy to make some changes with that law or that bill. But I had known that that had been considered in a previous session or a couple sessions back, but I just thought that there was additional work could be done.
No, there was no bill. There were no bills, so that's not on the agenda this year.
Okay,
I think the issues that were coming up with your specific region, I think they addressed somehow with DHS or working through that with
yep,
Fort
Yep.
Dodge leaving. And so I think there's mechanisms in place already that DHS can do, but I think they're working with whatever county it was that sort of left there on their own. So
yeah, because I am in the Blackhawk County based region that the bill might be, that the bill might be pertaining to is what I wanted to say. Thank
yeah,
you.
I think for everybody else, Fort Dodge, their county left that region, and it created a couple, a gap that a couple counties couldn't stay in that region. So DHS is working with them, and I think they're
Yep.
reassigning or doing something, but the regional system's still fluid. People are moving in and out, and that is one reason why Senator Dawson did that bill in the tax bill. He feels that having local property tax funds in the system makes people want to join certain regions and not be in other ones. And that's definitely the reason with Polk County. Nobody wanted Polk County because they had such a hole in their budget. They didn't want to have their county taxpayers subsidizing it. So his concept was that the maps would change if they got rid of the local property tax dollars. So that is some of the challenges that that region specifically had. The 30 some counties that were in it didn't all agree on things.
Amy, there was another question from Lindsay Robertson about the sustainability of the ARPA funds. And I think that is a concern we have. Again, we're kind of reacting to the act, but it is right now the way it reads, a 1-year funding. But I would say that I think it's on the minds of the legislators that wages and workforce and people with supporting people with disabilities in their home is a big issue. It seems to be one of the first things they lead with when we've had some conversations with them. So I do think it's a big question. If that is a 1-year funding, how do they sustain that level? And what other priorities would we recommend to enhance the system that would be short-time investments, but that wouldn't need an ongoing funding? And I think that's hard because wages are something that is going forward, and so is transportation. Some of the things that we're recommending they at least kind of fund in the beginning.
Yeah, and not to get overly complicated, but because it's an enhanced match, it just means you're going to get more federal dollars matched to your state dollar. So for instance, if you're getting $3 for every $1, this would go up by 10%. So you might get $3.30 for each, if my math was right there, $3.30 for every dollar. So that's temporary. So what the legislature can do is say what you want the providers who get that reimbursement to do with it. So you could tell them you want them to provide more transportation options, or you want them to give hazard pay or bonuses to all of those direct support professionals that have been working so hard during the pandemic. You can tell them you want to temporarily boost their wages. Again, that's probably not the fun part of that, because then that implies somebody's wages are going to go down after that match. So probably you're looking at more like what Bill had mentioned as hazard pay or a bonus of some sort for all of the work that they've done in those past years. It could be investments in their infrastructure or added services to people who have been cooped up for this until they could get a vaccination. So there's a lot of things that you can do for it. I think many states are already talking about that. We have not talked about it right now in Iowa. There's been no discussion. So I think it's the right time for that discussion. And I know that legislators are considering it. I'm going to tell you a scary thing though. I heard a certain Senate leader had told another lobbyist that he doesn't think Iowa needs the $1.3 billion coming into the state, and he's just as happy to just tell him to keep it. So I hope that's not true. If I hear it, I will post it on the website and on our social media, because I hope everybody takes action on that. Those are our tax dollars that we pay to our federal government, and if we're not going to get them back here, they're going somewhere else. I would tell you who it is, but since I didn't hear it directly, it's kind of secondhand. I don't want to imply that he really did say it, but it made me concerned. Also, I think the really important thing about those federal dollars that are coming down is that you really cannot cut your own state dollars going into a program in order to receive those. That's what Bill had talked about, not they have to be in addition to. So when you look at cutting local mental health property taxes, does that mean the county can no longer get those federal dollars that can be used for mental health? That's one of the 4 buckets that those federal dollars can be used for. They can be used for transportation and infrastructure. They can be used for mental health, for public health, and I can't remember the 4th one, but that's concerning if you're going to put all of those dollars that counties are going to get at risk too, because you're going to cut taxes. So some people are saying maybe we need to wait a year to make these things go into effect, because we don't want to jeopardize the federal funding that's coming into the state. There's just a lot of questions. There's more questions than there are answers right now.
In the original COVID HCBS Relief Act, which would have been prior to the change in our presidency, they had 5 things that they listed. They had increased direct care wages, which I do think is a little bit of a question mark when you're saying that way, Lindsay, is we do know that it's 1 year, but I think there's a the way I read that was a little bit of a promise. There's expanding funding for transportation. And then at that time, still the need for purchasing PPE for workers that are supporting that. And then hazard pay or bonus pay for those who've stuck that out. We are aware of caregivers who have had complete turnover in their place of employment, whether it was a group home or a nurse at a nursing home, who've went through a whole group of staff 3 or 4 times during this time, but they've stayed throughout that point. And then the waiting list, addressing the waiting list. And I think getting people off the waiting list, usually when people start services, they don't start with the highest need. We do know that people supported in home community-based services can be done at a lesser dollar amount. So I think that waiting list could be a big hook to hang our hat on, if that's the term we'd want to use. But that was from that was actually in the HCBS Relief Act, those recommendations. So we kind of stayed true to those talking points as well. But if there are other ones, bring them to our attention, and we can advocate on that behalf as well. So.
Can I ask?
So if anybody has any other questions.
I think we had one there. Somebody was.
Yeah. This is Garrett Fry. Cedar Rapids or Lake County, and this is directed towards Bill or Amy or whoever wants to answer this. But are you, as the Iowa DD Council, are you guys in favor or support of the HCBS Access Act, or are you guys doing very much to um, push or do anything with um, that, or will you?
Bill, do you want to take that?
A little bit, because Garrett, I was focused a little bit over the last 2 weeks on the other act that we were talking about. And I've been doing some reading on the HCBS Act, and from people that I have spoken to, it's some additional dollars that we're going to have to consider. So I think we'd be in support of that. And I think it's just trying to figure out what the priorities of that bill. And I don't know enough I don't want to go out and say this is what I think they are, but what I've read have been positive things. I think almost everything that is coming that way towards HCBS is addressing two big things. And from my perspective, it's been wages and then also waiting lists so that there's some capacity building for agencies. But that's what I know of it right now. Amy, do you know more about it? Or even Garrett, do you have some information you'd like to share?
Well, for myself, I just been looking into it for about the past week or so now, since it was released last Tuesday or Wednesday.
Yeah.
But for myself, I'm really interested in it because it would cover home-based community services. So for myself, I would receive adequate and appropriate long-term support services. And so I'm in favor of it. And I really want to talk to other legislators and really talk to senators about this issue because it's more on the federal level.
Yep.
But if we could unite and join forces, I personally, next week, I'll be speaking with Carrie across generations about this specifically. But for us that are in our home, it would help out tremendously because, like you mentioned earlier, cutting the cost of state funding um, is detrimental to a lot of people, especially myself. But putting dollars in the right uh, areas so that I can remain living in my own home with whether it's in-home healthcare or other services, um, the Medicaid and system right now is crazy. But I just would like to uh, really get involved with that because I see it hopeful and beneficial, um, especially
Yeah,
with.
thank you, Garrett, for bringing that up. I do have it. I have it kind of towards the top of my to-do list to kind of do a deeper dive into that. And I think I caught your name on another phone call I was on earlier this week, or at least an email chain. I think it's some, that's the mission of the DD Council, is to allow people to live in the community and be involved in the community any way that they would like to be. And from what I can tell, that's what that bill supports. It just feels, kind of back to that mental health redesign. One of the first slides Amy put out there, we haven't always been in a situation where we've had to choose how to spend money, additional monies. And so it's been a while since we've been able to invest in the HCBS services. So this is an exciting time. And I think that, to your point, allowing you to be there and live where you would, a place of your choice, that's something that we're wholeheartedly behind. So.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett, because I've been so focused on the state stuff. I haven't really
Right.
looked at some of the federal things. So I really appreciate that.
In addition to that, last thing I'll say is, and I can forward you an email, but there's a couple other small grassroots organizations working on this, and we have a meeting upcoming next week that you all are welcome to join us. But I just wanted to throw that out there because it is going to be all about the HCBS Access Act. And I think it just will be informative and really great. There will be 10 additional other states that will be joining us. And then there's the 3 senators and 1 representative from, I believe, Michigan or somewhere out east that has signed on to that. But we really need to get it into the House and into the Senate and actually have discussion on it. But other than that, that's all for my comments. But I thank you all for the great work that you're doing. Very, very appreciative.
Thank you for adding that. That's great. And I think I know what meeting you're talking about. I think it's on Monday or Tuesday. I'll make sure that we post that as well and we let people know of that meeting. So we should forward that on. But thank you, Garrett.
Yeah, thank you. And just we will post that. Bill, I'll work with you to get it posted too on Infonet. But coming soon next week, we're going to have a new redesign of Infonet. And I just wanted, if you go to the website, I didn't want you to be concerned that it looks a little bit different. It's going to look a little bit more like ID Action and Duty Council. And so this is going to be, we'll have links to the legislative guide, voter information, the advocacy toolkit, the bill tracker, our alerts will be here. You can go right to our take action page from the top or the current newsletter, or if you know people that want to join the network, doesn't cost anything, just make sure you get the stuff. Our calendar for the legislative forums, all of our resources, the bill tracker, all of the things that we have currently on our website, our issue that we released last week, but you can go to the archives. You can look at votes for people. I guess we didn't carry that over yet, but so you're going to see it looking a little bit different than it did before, but it's still the same stuff. If you can't find something or something's wonky to you, just email us and we can make those changes. We'll have also this panel is going to change that says legislative panel, and it'll be the legislative guide right up front so you can find it. But I just wanted you to know the little sneak peek here that's what's going to be happening sometime early next week. So thanks everybody. Bill, do you have anything final to?
No, we're really pleased with everybody coming on in. So thank you. Did somebody say something there?
Yeah, Amy, what is the new Infonet homepage address? What's the new address?
It's the same. We aren't changing the address. It'll just look different. But
Okay.
Iowa, it's in the chat too. Bill put it in the chat, infonetiowa.org.
Oh, okay. It's not changing as far as what we have to type in.
Nope.
Right. It will just go switch from the current state to the new one. Yep. We're excited for the changes. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Well, have a great weekend, everybody.
Have a great Friday, everybody. Thank you. Keep advocating.